Welcome to Dyslexia 101. My name is Rebecca Tolson. I am Vice President of Literacy Initiatives at the Nyehouse Education Center. We will be covering in this presentation what dyslexia is, what strategies are effective in teaching students to read and spell, and what laws relate to dyslexia. Is dyslexia a new term? The term dyslexia was first used in 1887 by Dr. Rudolf Berlin, a German physician. Dr. Berlin coined the term dyslexia to indicate a reading disorder on the word reading level. However, he used the term to describe individuals who had lost their ability to read because of an injury or a stroke. In 1896, Dr. W. Pringle Morgan wrote in the British Medical Journal about Percy F. He was a 14-year-old who was bright and intelligent, but he had an inability to read. This was called word blindness. Samuel T. Orton. There was a lot of research done on the subject during the 20th century. You may have heard of the Orton-Gillingham method of teaching students with dyslexia to read. As a result of his research, Samuel Orton is often called the father of dyslexia. Dr. Samuel T. Orton is known as the father of dyslexia. He was appointed to establish a mental health clinic in Iowa. He became intrigued by this 16-year-old young man who was reading on a first grade level. This led to his interest in dyslexia. He found that it was not a vision or a perceptual problem, but a problem with language. He used the term strephosymbolia, which means twisted symbols. He believed that multisensory teaching would prove to be helpful. He was influenced by the kinesthetic method of Grace Fernald. Samuel T. Orton identified the syndrome of the specific language disability. He separated the disabled readers from students with mental disabilities, brain damage, and primary emotional disturbances. And he proposed a system for diagnosis. And he outlined principles of remediation for disabled readers. Anna Gillingham and her colleagues were also psychologists and teachers. 85% of the English language is regular. They analyzed and organized this English language for the teaching procedures that Dr. Orton devised in the 1930s. Anna Gillingham trained teachers to use this system. Now, this English language that is 85% reliable or regular, it can be organized into patterns that are more or less regular and can be relied on to help us understand how the language is put together, so we can decode new words. The English language is only 15% irregular, so it doesn't follow the systematic rules or concepts of the language. What Anna Gillingham and her team did was they looked at all the English words and they discovered that there are only 6 kinds of syllables. If you look at a word, divide it into syllables, the syllable type will help you pronounce the vowel. So you can pronounce the syllable and then decode the word. This was the process that Anna Gillingham established and linked with Samuel T. Orton. So the foundation of the Orton-Gillingham-based methods of teaching reading through teaching the structure of English, the English language. Dyslexia facts and myths. Do students with dyslexia see things backwards? Students with dyslexia see exactly what everyone else sees. In a study in 1979, Lieberman and Schenkweiler concluded that students with dyslexia do not differ from average readers in the ability to distinguish designs or faces. In 1986, Valentino did a study in which students were asked to copy designs and Hebrew letters. Now, these students were not familiar with the Hebrew alphabet. Students with dyslexia did not differ from those students, did as well as the students without dyslexia. There are children with visual perception difficulties, which makes copying different, but it is not a characteristic of dyslexia. In the 3D world, we can turn an object and its name does not change. In the 2D world, we rotate those letters, for instance, and their names and sounds both change. So this is the letter B and its sound is B. If I turn it, this is the letter D and its sound is D. This is the letter P and its sound is P. And this is the letter Q and it needs a U and says Q. In the 3D world, we can turn an object and its name does not change. In the 2D world, we rotate those letters, for instance, and their names and sounds both change. The difficulty comes when students with dyslexia are not secure with which name goes with which symbol. Love that word, secure. Do students with dyslexia make more reversal errors than other students? Letter reversals are not uncommon in young children as they learn to read and write. Reversals can certainly be a red flag in children who are still reversing in 2nd and 3rd grade and beyond. Correcting the reversals alone does not solve the problem. An evaluation can determine if the problem is an understanding of the patterns of the language or the perceptual skills. This can guide the remediation, and the child with dyslexia will benefit from a comprehensive reading intervention. How is the reader with dyslexia different from a skilled reader? Current research supports the prevalent view that dyslexia involves language problems. Some, but not all, show a significant relationship between early language processing and/or production problems and later reading problems. On a phonological level, they may have difficulty with phonological awareness, such as rhyming, segmenting sounds, changing sounds, blending sounds. They may have difficulty identifying the number of words in a sentence, segmentations, identifying syllables in a word, breaking that word down into syllables like fan, task, tick. Or they may have difficulty hearing the individual sounds in a word like mop, ah. This is phonemic awareness, this last one. Segmenting and blending the individual sounds of the language. One phoneme is the difference between sit and slit. The good news is that its symptoms are responsive to remediation. We can teach students to become phonologically aware. Phonemic awareness is so critical to learning to read that it is said to have the Matthew effect. The Matthew effect is taken from Keith Stanovich's synthesis of the reading research. This cumulative view of reading that posits that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. If a child is born with good phonemic awareness, it will be easy to learn how to read. As you read, your skill level improves. You also develop a deeper and richer vocabulary. Keith Stanovich was from the University of Toronto, Department of Cognitive Science. By contrast, kids who are not born with good phonemic awareness have difficulty learning to read. For the child who struggles with phonemic awareness, it will be difficult to learn to read. We tend to avoid difficult activities, so there is less practice and improvement. Children are aware that others are excelling when they are not, so self-esteem is impacted. There is a continuum of difficulty. Students may have a little difficulty or a lot of difficulty. The good news is that phonemic awareness can be learned if the difficulty is discovered and addressed with direct reading instruction. On an orthographic level, students with dyslexia may have difficulty grouping common letter groups such as TCH, IGH, STR. Knowing how to pronounce the vowel. Is it long or is it short? Does it say ah? Does it say a? Does the a say ah like in wash, or like banana? They might have difficulty dividing words into syllables. For example, to evaluate a child's ability to recognize patterns, we ask them to read nonsense words that followed the English patterns. Good readers were able to remember sequences of the top 2 words because of the patterns. Good readers had difficulty with the second group because they're not decodable. What we found is that dyslexic students with dyslexia found each group of words equally difficult, even the ones that are non-words that are phonetic patterns, like the first 2. Can you read these words? These non-words? Toughies. Well, decoding trypsinogen is an example. You may be able to read longer nonsense words because you have a sense of how to divide these words into syllables and a sense of how each of the syllables should be pronounced, even if it doesn't have meaning. This is not a natural skill for a reader with dyslexia. When you go through all the steps to sound out a word, it's difficult to remember what you are reading. So if you have to focus on decoding, you aren't freeing up cognitive desk space to create, innovate, remember, understand what you read. That's a problem. So this decoding problem, we know that remediation, and we go back to Anna Gillingham, figuring out the 6 patterns of the English language that are reliable. These are referred to as the 6 syllable types. So the first one here is open syllable because it ends in a vowel. We have a closed syllable. It's a vowel that's followed by at least 1 or more consonants. In the final position, that vowel is going to be short. We have the vowel consonant E pattern that has a silent E. We have a vowel pair pattern where 2 adjacent vowels are together and each one dictates the vowel sound. So we have to learn those individually. That pattern's harder because we can't rely on the pronunciation of those 2 vowels. Sometimes it's long, sometimes it's short, sometimes it's unexpected. Now, the unexpected sound definitely relates to the vowel R syllable, because when an R is follows the vowel, when we say it's a bossy R, it takes over that vowel sound. So it's no longer short, it's no longer long. So in or, it's not an ah or an o. So the or sound is a vowel sound and it's a pattern. Anytime you have that, The majority of the time you have an R after a vowel, it's going to be unexpected. So you have your ers, your or, your R. And then lastly, we have the final stable syllable. And this is, it's in the final position of multisyllabic words. It's going to have a consonant L and an E, and it's going to sound like a blend. The E is silent, like bull. So there's a few other reliable patterns that are not consonant LE, but we call them final stable syllables, like TION saying shun, AGE saying idge, like in damage, and so forth. The ability to read and comprehend what you are reading depends upon rapid and automatic recognition and decoding of single words. If it is slow and clunky, if there are hesitations, your comprehension, obviously it's lacking automaticity and fluency, but your comprehension will definitely be impeded. Another core deficit which contributes to the difficulty of automatic recognition of words. In addition to a weakness in phonological awareness, there is also a weakness in the ability to name in rapid succession. This is called rapid automatic naming. When a child is tested, they may be asked to quickly name colors, numbers, letters, or pictures of objects. This is referred to as rapid serial naming or rapid automatized naming. This form of retrieval difficulty appears to be linked to dyslexia. Rapid naming measures the ability to retrieve information from the long-term memory by measuring the student's ability to pull this information quickly from the memory. This is important in developing instant word recognition. It is also why those students may qualify for extended time on tests, because that pulling in of the information forward from the long-term memory takes longer. It's not that it's not there, but it takes longer to retrieve. So rapid automatized naming helps us get to the bottom of that weakness or difficulty. Dyslexia is a specific language-based disorder characterized by difficulties with single word decoding. Now, here is our definition. Dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin. It is characterized by difficulties with accurate and/or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. These difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of language that is often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities and the provision of effective classroom instruction. Secondary consequences may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that can impede growth of vocabulary and background knowledge. Slow and inaccurate decoding is the best predictor of difficulties in reading comprehension. Reading comprehension is influenced by decoding skills. Decoding could be the underlying difficulty for all the problems with comprehension. It is influenced by fluency. Fluency is the ease and speed with which the reader translates the symbols on the page into meaning and will affect the ease and speed of comprehension. Language processing difficulties will always lead to difficulties with comprehension. World knowledge sets up the context for good understanding using that background knowledge. A good reader visualizes while reading, pulls in prior knowledge, and asks questions as they're reading. They also make inferences by reading between the lines. If your child or student has ADHD, comprehension can be impacted as they may have difficulty focusing on the text. How can students with dyslexia learn to read? Guided reading and balanced reading are not effective for struggling readers. Structured literacy teaches them to decode, to sound out words in a systematic manner. It includes direct instruction in phonology, in sound symbol association, that's your phonics, syllable instruction, those are those syllable types that we talked about, morphology. Morphology is based on the meaningful units in words. A morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning in a word. Syntax is our word order. That's our grammar. And semantics has to do with word meaning, our vocabulary. Now, this instruction includes direct instruction in these components of language. We call them the ingredients of language. It is actually a more effective approach with all readers because they gain a more thorough knowledge of the structure of the language. In one study, 90% of all children identified as learning disabled were referred for special education services because of reading problems. 90% of these children have problems with word recognition skills. Dyslexia is defined as having a difficulty decoding single words, word recognition skills. Keep in mind, a secondary consequence is comprehension and impeded vocabulary for sure. But it's because they can't lift the print themselves or have difficulty lifting the prose. They definitely can because it is treatable. Therefore, a multisensory structured language education curriculum, which includes instruction in decoding, comprehension, and fluency, is appropriate for a large portion of students identified with reading difficulties, regardless of the specific educational placement. The International Multisensory Structured Language Education Council, also known as IMSLEC, accredits over 50 dyslexia therapist programs across the country. Is dyslexia more common among girls than boys? Recent research shows that as many girls are affected with dyslexia as boys. Won't most students outgrow dyslexia? Research has shown us that early intervention is the best way to prevent or minimize reading problems. So longitudinal studies show that of the children who were reading disabled in 3rd grade and received no specific remediation, 74% remained disabled in grade 9. Can dyslexia be inherited? Dyslexia is heritable. Genes have been identified, and with no family history, there is only a 3 to 7% chance of dyslexia by Fumiko Haift, from researcher published in 2016. Are there many students with dyslexia? Why do we see such a difference? They say that the prevalence is 5 to 17% of the US population. Well, dyslexia, it depends on how poor reading is defined. Many students have dyslexic tendencies, but they do not qualify for a district's intervention program. We have students with dyslexia in general education that do not have the severity level to qualify for special education, so they may not be identified. Dyslexia is a condition similar to hypertension in that it comes in varying degrees, mild, moderate, and severe. Students who are mildly dyslexic but have good classroom instruction may not require much extra help. Very bright children may mask their symptoms. The current thinking is that 15 to 20% of kids have some degree of difficulty with decoding words as a result of a weakness in phonological awareness or rapid naming, which links very closely into our definition of dyslexia. Schools are in a sort of denial at times if they think they do not have students with dyslexia. Due to its prevalence rate, it's not possible that they don't. Many children who have dyslexia also have ADHD. Do students with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder also have dyslexia? Doctors refer to this as a comorbid condition. A person can have two illnesses or two disabilities at the same time. For example, the chicken pox and a broken arm, but one did not cause the other. Language activities are frustrating for the student with dyslexia and may cause them to show signs of ADHD. There are 2 federal laws and 3 state laws for dyslexia in Ohio. Under the IDEA, dyslexia falls under the specific learning disability category. This is our federal law. The federal government defined the categories and outlined eligibility, but certain regulations are passed down to the state and others to the local school boards. So each school district has a little different policy, especially how they evaluate and remediate dyslexia. How do students qualify for special education? A referral, a psychoeducational evaluation, and an individual education plan, IEP. Section 504 satisfies the requirements of the American Disabilities Act and allows for accommodations. Section 504 may provide assistance for students with learning differences who do not qualify under federal law IDEA. 48 of the 50 states have dyslexia laws. Ohio has 3 dyslexia laws. House Bill 996 created a dyslexia pilot program. House Bill 157 provides professional development for dyslexia through educational service centers. And House Bill 436, passed in January of this year, establishes screening, instruction, and professional development for dyslexia. The law includes establishing an Ohio Dyslexia Committee charged with creating a dyslexia guidebook. The intent of the dyslexia laws is to provide help for students with dyslexia, regardless of whether they are being served in special education classes under Section 504 or in the regular education classroom. One of my favorite quotes from Margaret Bird Rawson in her book, The Many Faces of Dyslexia. Dyslexia, the differences are personal, the diagnosis is clinical, the treatment is educational, the understanding is scientific. What is the prognosis? Depends on the severity. Remember, it's on a spectrum. The age of intervention, the earlier, the better. Support of parents and educators takes a team. The innate intelligence. This is not a cognitive disability. And perseverance of the student. It's hard work to learn to read for students with dyslexia. But remember, it's treatable, but not curable. A child with this does not outgrow dyslexia. So can individuals with dyslexia be successful in life? 35% of entrepreneurs in the US met criteria for dyslexia. Why? They're risk takers. They're very good communicators. They have determination and perseverance. It is important to help the child identify areas of strength and develop some expertise. These are called islands of competence. Resilience comes from a mindset associated with optimism, hope, satisfying interpersonal relationships, and effective coping strategies. What is a parent to do? Educate themselves. Read whatever they can from the International Dyslexia Association. They put out fact sheets and information that is from researchers and experts in the field. Ask questions. Learn about the reading programs in their child's school, which curriculums are being used, and how and when is progress monitored. Be proactive and involved in their child's education inside and outside of school, and network with other parents. There's some wonderful supportive programs out there. There is Decoding Dyslexia, which is for parent support group, that provides great support and services, as well as the International Dyslexia Association has a parent membership that offers support and information. Here are some local resources. The International Dyslexia Association I just met. If you go under their information tab, they have all types of resources that are understandable, relatable to all different audiences, educators, parents, professionals, professors, and so forth. Locally, where I live in Canton, Ohio, in Stark County, we have the Northern Ohio branch of the International Dyslexia Association, but there's three groups in Ohio. Ohio Valley is in the Cincinnati area, and we have a branch in the Columbus area, the Central Ohio branch. So when you become a member of the IDA, you get dual membership to the local branch. And lastly, Ohio is being charged with creating a dyslexia guidebook. But if you would like an updated, pretty updated 2018 version of a dyslexia guidebook, the Texas Education Agency put out their guidebook, and it's very comprehensive, and I recommend. It's free to download, so I included it as a resource for you. It's a great resource, and we'll have one in Ohio by December of this year. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, I included my email address on the first slide, so feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your time.